Unencumbered by political correctness, undeterred in her mission to spread the truth, unafraid to be a true conservative, she's unapologetic, uncompromising, unwavering, and an undeniably powerful voice when we need it most.
This is my fight song.
This is Rose Unplugged.
These podcasts are made available by MyPillow. You know, they've got the sandals available right now at mypillow.com. Are they as comfortable as the slippers? And I am here to tell you, oh yes, they are. Get online, go to mypillow.com and order your sandals. And while you're there, take a look at all of the other great products they have. I've got the Giza sheets that even now, a year and a half later, are still like they were the very first day I put them on the bed. mypillow.com, promo code ROSE if you want great savings. Promo code ROSE at mypillow.com. Joining me today is Derek Maltz. He's retired from the Drug Enforcement Administration, that's the DEA, after 28 years of dedicated service. And he's currently just a symbol of hope for families who have lost their children to fentanyl poisoning. And he's out there all the time making people aware, and he's joining me today. Derek Maltz, how are you, sweetie? It's good to have you on, my friend.
Everything's doing okay, just, doing the best I can to help support all these poor families and communities that are losing their loved ones at record levels. Just look today, the news came out with CDC reporting, 279% increase. The fentanyl-related deaths from 2016 to 2021. There's increases like that all over the country. I mean, last year, reading the California stats, 2,200% increase from a 5-year period, 2016 to 21. So it's really getting bad out there, and the families are suffering. So I'm doing what I can to help.
Let's talk about that number. My gosh, fentanyl overdoses, people, the deaths surged 279%. That's since 2016. Interestingly enough, heroin deaths fell during that same period, yes. Right?
Well, Rose, the problem is, or not the problem, there is really there's no heroin out there. There's very little cocaine. There's a little bit of, there's meth obviously out there. The problem is that stuff's being mixed with fentanyl now. And so, the reason the heroin deaths are pretty much non-existent is the bad guys don't want to get involved in the cultivation process and the manufacturing process of heroin when they could just make opioids like synthetic fentanyl in these labs and make a lot more money.
And right now, too, we're talking about, and this opioid crisis, too, the fentanyl, the overdose, and it's not an overdose. I mean, it's just, I hate it when I hear people say, they're drug addicts or there's an overdose. Really, it's just a poisoning. It is a poisoning. And a lot of times, and you and I have talked about this so often, and we've given examples, and we've had parents who have lost a child who should never have lost a child. The story, it reminds me, Derek, of the one story you were on with me. There was a woman whose daughter had, she was taking food over to a neighbor who wasn't feeling well. And her foot went through a board in the deck area or the porch area, and she harmed herself, and she was in a lot of pain. And before she could get to the doctor, one of her friends said to her, hey, I've got this, a Percocet, let me give it to you. Well, it was laced with fentanyl. And they didn't know that. The girl didn't know it. The girl died. She died. And she was only doing that.
Rose,
she's not a drug user. She wanted something for her pain, and her girlfriend thought she could help her.
Right, but that's happening everywhere. Unfortunately, in this country now, mental illness is on the rise.
Yes.
Depression, anxiety is on the rise. And unfortunately, the kids are turning to medication for help. They're not communicating with their parents. They're not going to the doctors. They're just going online, and they're hearing about, take this pill, take that pill, take a Xanax, take an M30, you're going to feel better. And they're not being educated on the fact that these pills are tainted, and they're made in these filthy, dirty labs in Mexico now, and they're coming into the country at record levels, and then they're dying. And that's kind of one of my biggest issues right now, that the government in America is not reaching out to the kids through our Department of Education, or they're not using social media influences and reels to get the message. So recently, what really pissed me off, and I say that very passionately, because I do give the Democrats a lot of credit for recognizing the importance of using young social media influencers to spread their political messages, okay? Because these young kids today are uninformed about what's going on in the country. It's only what they see on the social media sites. So my question to the president, to the attorney general, Department of Homeland Security, Health and Human Services, CDC is, why are you not using the same social media influences to teach and educate the kids? Because that's where they're learning. They're not listening to this particular podcast. They're not watching mainstream media, cable news. They're watching videos all day long. And why can't we get professional athletes, role models, celebrities, and influencers to tell them to stay away from this poison?
Why indeed?
That's the question of the day.
It really is, isn't it? I mean, it just irks you so much. And, you know, I talked to Tom Homan not too long ago, and we were talking about the troops that are being sent in. They're essentially just being sent in to facilitate the process. They're not there to stop anyone from coming in, for God's sake. But, you know,
exactly.
And there was a story about how they're experimenting right now in Tijuana and Mexicali. The cartels are actually testing fentanyl on drug addicts. They're experimenting with people with the fentanyl. Did you see that story?
Right. And Rose, but not only that, but when they have addicts that are dying, then they send it to America. It's kind of like Chapo Guzman's kids are throwing some of the guys in the cage with the tigers, and the tigers are eating them alive. That's the kind of people we're dealing with now. These are not normal people. They don't care about human life.
They don't.
So I'm aware of that, and I'm also aware of the millions and millions of pills. Like, just as an example, like 2 weeks ago in San Diego, CBP in San Diego POE, I think it's Oda Mesa, 5 million of these fake pills in one truck. It was in green beans or string beans. But here's what Americans need to realize. DEA has put out now the most current statistic: 6 out of 10 pills that they seize and analyze have a potentially lethal dose of fentanyl.
Yeah.
So that one tractor trailer could have killed over 2 million people. This is what's real. And the public is not getting the messages.
You know, this is just, it's frightening to me. And, you know, and when you go back to those cities, they're border cities, okay? They're essentially being used as laboratories. What we are doing to human beings, what we are allowing, and this is what I can't wrap my head around. How are we doing this in good conscience? How can we possibly, when children are involved especially, just turn a blind eye to all of this?
Right. That's the question of the day. The same question I have is, like, these kids are admitting to taking all these birth control pills on the journey because they know they're going to be raped many times. And now there's more studies that are coming out with, like, and I don't know how many, I don't want to give a full, stat, but they're coming out with, like, miscellaneous DNA in their bodies because they've been raped so many times on the journey.
Oh my God.
It's massive amounts. It's not like a couple different types of DNA. And so they're proving these kids are being sexually, raped and molested on the journeys, and these women. And, like, you always wonder, like, what about women's rights, and what about all this
right?
We got to treat everyone equally and fairly, and these poor people. So it's so inhumane. And then the stash houses where they're living, 40, 50, 60 of them together in either a stash house with no air conditioning, no water, or in a tractor trailer with 125 degrees temperature, and they're burning inside of their bodies. But Rose, before we forget, I hope you're on top of the new problem we have with the Trank, the animal tranquilizer.
I'm not.
That's the Xylazine that's being put in the fentanyl, and they're seeing it all over the country. The DEA recently did the warning. They had witnessed it in like 48 out of 50 states. But this particular tranquilizer for horses and elephants. Okay, so the DEA recently did a alert to the public that in 48 out of 50 states, they're finding the Trank pharmaceutical drug. It's not an opioid. Now you can buy it for $1 a kilogram on Chinese websites, which a lot of drug dealers are doing. And they're mixing
All right, and
product
let's
to put
start
on the
again.
streets.
If you're moving around, wherever you were when we first started out, the interview was so much better. But we're gonna have to start again with.
Yeah, I'm in the same spot.
Oh, that's weird. Okay, so we'll start again with the animal, just the trank known as an animal tranquilizer or Xylazine. Okay.
Right. Okay. So basically, Xylazine is a pharmaceutical drug. It's actually being sold on Chinese websites for $1 a kilogram.
Oh my God.
The drug trafficking organizations are mixing it with fentanyl. The DEA just put out an alert, a warning that they're seeing it all over the country. But here's the problem. This particular substance is causing necrosis. It's rotting of the human tissue. So they're having skin ulcerations all over their body, amputations in some cases. It's slowing down the heart rate. It's causing more medical conditions and catastrophes out there on the streets. And it's all over the place. I mean, Philadelphia is ground zero for this stuff. Just go to Kensington, and it looks like the night of the living dead. These poor people are dying on the streets as no one's helping them, right? We're sending billions of dollars around the world to help all these other countries, and we're not helping our own citizens who are now mixing and taking a damn animal tranquilizer mixed in with fentanyl.
And here's the
Think
point.
about that, bro.
That's frightening because here's the thing. Here's what you're saying. Essentially, is that, okay, even people who aren't seeking this drug out are going to be affected by the lethalness of this drug.
Exactly. So the kid that needs some help with depression takes a pill. They think it's Xanax. In the pill is now this Xylazine mixed with fentanyl, and they're they're rotting from inside their body out. That's how disgusting this is. And it's coming from China.
Well, of course it is.
Coming from China.
It all is. I'm sure they're very pleased with the success rate they've had in destroying American families and killing off their children.
Right, and destabilizing our future generation and weakening our society because the future doctors, lawyers, armed services, leaders in the country are dying at record levels. These kids are never getting a chance. I have an old saying, Rose, like kids are supposed to learn from mistakes, not die from mistakes. We all learn from mistakes. Back in our day, you didn't die from making a mistake.
No.
Most of the time, right?
Right.
You learn from that mistake.
Such a good point. It's interesting, too, because I remember about a week ago, now that you bring this up, or no, actually, it was a couple of weeks ago, CNN had a story on the internet, and it said that the Biden administration, declared that fentanyl laced with Xylazine was an emerging threat. Well, is that it?
Yes.
Yeah, anybody can declare that. What the hell are you doing to stop it?
Right. Well, that's the thing. They came out with the statement because it's happening all over the country. The DEA administrator also declared it a major threat to the country. And it clearly is a major threat, especially when you go on the streets and you talk to the people that are using these substances and are dying literally on the streets. So, but the question of the day is, what are we doing about it?
Right.
What are we doing to put the pressure on China? What are we doing to secure the border? What are we doing to actually go after the cartels? I mean, we're getting hit with so many different complex problems now just on this drug crisis, which we've never seen. By the way, this is nothing like we've ever seen in the history of America when it comes to the poisonous substances coming in from adversaries like China. And then, of course, Rose, we've talked about it before, but China's role in the money laundering for the cartels is another thing that's underreported, as they're moving millions and millions of dollars for the Mexican cartels, picking up cash all over the country using Chinese students that are here on visas that are sent here by the Communist Chinese Party.
Wow.
And now, here's the biggest thing. When you hear about all these new national security issues with Chinese businessmen buying property and land and farmland and by our installations, our military installations, they're buying a lot of these properties with cash because they're collecting millions and millions of dollars from the drug traffic.
Yes. Yes.
So they're beating us in so many ways. It's really sad.
We're literally paying not only with our currency, but with our children's lives, the Chinese to essentially just keep on going and taking as much control as they can. I mean, we're literally paying for this. We're paying for it in every way possible. Derek Maltz.
And then
go ahead. Finish up. Go ahead.
Counterintelligence operations, when they have these people here operate in our country, I mean, you see what's going on the border. They're having record levels of, middle-aged Chinese men coming into our country through the border. I mean, you see that. I don't even know what the numbers are. It was so high. The numbers were off the charts as far as recent migration from these Chinese men. Now, again, let's not forget how many of these millions that are the gotaways, how many of them are
That's
from
right.
China or Russia or Iran or Syria or Yemen, countries that hate America, and they're running across the border. We don't even know who they are, where they are, what they're going to do here. That should be frightening to every American, no matter who you voted for.
I'm frightened. I really am. Derek Maltz, you can check him out on Twitter. It's at Derek Maltz, DEREKMALTZ _senior, SR. And Derek, you do amazing work. I thank you so much for everything you do. And I know you're busy today, and yet you took time out to do this. And I appreciate you. I really, really do. I know you know that.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Anytime, call me because I know you're trying to get the messages out.
I
Thank you,
am.
Rose.
Thank you so much, and God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye.